You know, when you're tuned into a Saturday special of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, things in the NHL are buzzing, and there is no shortage of fantasy impact to break down. And that's why we're taking a look at all of it on the Saturday special. Ooh, baby, let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
No better way to wake up on Saturday than to tap into your source for fantasy hockey news. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast Saturday special trade deadline reaction. My goodness, Steele. Feels good to be here doing one of these with you. So much to get to on today's episode that all I have to say is shout out to the everydayers for holding us down and making us your first listen every single day, even occasionally on a Saturday, when it warrants you and I getting on here, spending a little bit of extra time because, oh, baby, there is a lot of fantasy impact to be had. We're going to kick off the show with Jake Guentzel. We're going to talk about the Carolina Hurricanes. They had Evgeny Kuznetsov as well. These are interesting ads for a team that needed offense, Steele. I got all kinds of takes. I got all kinds of angles ready for you. Been watching way too much trade deadline coverage. Anyhow, Jets, Winnipeg, they add Toffoli, another good move. We're going to take a look at our favorite moves of the day, some big, some more under the radar, and we're going to wrap up the show with our winners and losers because I'm telling you, Steele, there are a couple of teams on my list that I am scratching my head at what they're doing, and then on the other side of the coin, I got hats off for teams like Vegas. Oh, baby, we got so much to talk to. I'm going to throw it right over to you before I literally just run on for the next 30 minutes because I think we could both do that. We're going to try and keep it tight. You know this is your source. 30 minutes. We're trying to break it all down for you guys every single day. Steele, over to you, brother. Where are you looking first? How do you think this Jake Guentzel deal goes down for both sides?
I mean, it's an absolutely incredible deal for the Carolina Hurricanes. Just to set the stage once again, going to the Carolina Hurricanes, Jake Guentzel and Ty Smith from the Pittsburgh Penguins. And in return, the Penguins get Michael Bunting, Ville Koivunen, Vasily Ponomarev, and Cruz Lucius, a 2024 conditional first round and a 2024 conditional fifth round pick from the Carolina Hurricanes. Also in a separate deal, the Carolina Hurricanes acquired, like you said, Evgeny Kuznetsov for a 2025 third round pick. Washington is retaining 50% of that salary because he's got a high salary cap at just under $8 million, I believe. So I love the deals that the Carolina Hurricanes have made. Don Waddell has hit this trade deadline right out of the park with these two acquisitions. This is a team that can now win the Stanley Cup with these two acquisitions into their lineup. You bring in two Stanley Cup champions in Jake Guentzel and Evgeny Kuznetsov. Kuznetsov has had a pretty significant drop-off this year in value.
Sure.
But like you said off air, a change of scenery could be exactly what he needs to get going once again.
I think so,
find his passion for the game. Over to Jake Guentzel, though, a two-time 40-goal scorer, 34 postseason goals, 58 points in 58 games. That is exactly what the Carolina Hurricanes needed right now. In the past, they've struggled offensively in the playoffs. And I know last year they ran into a very hot Florida Panthers, hot Sergei Bobrovsky team, but they needed more goal-scoring touch. And now, and that's exactly what they got from Jake Guentzel. And I know some people out there feel like Guentzel's, when we talk about fantasy value or just overall value in the NHL, I know some people out there feel like Guentzel's fantasy value or just value may fall off because he's not playing with Sidney Crosby anymore. But Sebastian Aho is no chump by any means. He's going to be playing with some of the most elite young players right now in Carolina. Sebastian Aho, Martin Necas, Andrei Svechnikov, and a few others in that top six group. So I think Don Waddell has nailed this out of the park. He got exactly what he's looking for. You get Frederik Andersen back. He had a good good win against the Montreal Canadiens. You feel comfortable with Andersen and Kochetkov in the blue paint. You feel comfortable with the blue line with Brady Shea and Brent Burns and everybody on that blue line. You address the problems up front with some goal scoring in the playoffs. Again, just nailed it out of the park for me.
Steele, you just nailed it out of the park with that astute breakdown. My goodness me. And I wanted to start with that first point because there are so many angles to get to, guys. There's going to be a little bit of a longer episode today for obvious reasons. We're going to talk to Toffoli, our favorite deals of the day, big and little, trade deadline, winners and losers. Let me get to my first point, which is the one that you brought up. Guentzel has produced with or without Sid. Is there a drop-off between Sidney Crosby, the greatest player of this generation, and Sebastian Aho, a player that is still establishing himself in the NHL and still definitely has a lot to prove in terms of getting his team over the hump? Sid, Mr. Clutch. We're not going to compare those two. However, in terms of offensive ability, I don't think there's that much drop-off. And in terms of potential,
there isn't.
I'm going to say the ceiling's even higher for this duo. In terms of what can they do together moving forward? Does it mean they're going to replicate that kind of success? Absolutely not. Is the potential there? Does Don Waddell know more than us? I think he knows a whole lot more. And if he's doing what he's doing to get Guentzel, this is a home run for the Carolina Hurricanes because also you mentioned this, Steele. They've needed that secondary offensive punch. They haven't had – look, Jake Guentzel's not a superstar. But when you bring in Guentzel and a little bit of a project here in Evgeny Kuznetsov, and that's my third point, and it's not my last because I'm a little bit concerned about Carolina. I'll leave it at that in a second. Kuznetsov is interesting to me. We all love Guentzel. That makes a whole lot of sense. He comes back. I don't even care. I'm not looking for any kind of like return period. If he even gets in a few games at the end, he's immediately into the lineup because this Carolina team, I haven't looked at their schedule, but if it's even a little bit soft, they are going to get wins down the stretch, especially if Freddie comes back. Let me finish off. Kuzi. If he can come back in, Steele, Rod Brind'Amour might be the perfect coach to light a fire under him. That's number one. And number two, he had a little sniff at a wake-up call here. That's no pun intended. Wow, that's hilarious. Had a little sniff. Anyway, I think this could be huge for them. They've needed a little bit more secondary scoring. There you go. And lastly, it's not all bells and whistles because I mentioned this to you off air. Man, I'm saying a lot. I'm sorry. They got a lot softer. There's a lot of players now in that mix, a lot of little guys, Seth Jarvis, Toivu Teravainen. These guys are a very soft forward group. They are the stingiest defensive group in the league, allowing the least shots against per game. But I'm a little bit concerned. They give up one of their only players with a little bit of edge and bunting up front. No size, but they just got smaller and a little bit of the same style. So I'm just a little bit worried about when they're going to have to go up against teams like someone you're going to talk about in the New York Rangers. That's all.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to disagree with you on this one. This is This is a little bit of a smaller forward group, but I still think they've got a ton of tenacity and a ton of physicality in that offensive group. Jordan Staal, Jordan Martinook, even Jesper Kotkaniemi on the fourth line, Andrei Svechnikov, Sebastian Aho. Kotkaniemi is a physical guy now in this league. He is, and he's not afraid to throw his body around. Right. And then when you've got the guys on the blue line as well, I get what you're saying. I don't think they're as soft or as small as you're putting them out to be, but agree to disagree in this scenario. Because when I look at some of these players, I know they've got the tenacity, the physicality.
Hit us in the comments. Let us know what you guys think. Anyway, I hear where you're coming from. I just know what these championship teams have been built on the last couple of years.
Yeah,
we're going to talk about Vegas. I'm just a little bit concerned about too much finesse being added in when grit is what really is that defining factor at points in the playoffs. Anyway, Guentzel, big ad. Let's talk about Tyler Toffoli. Let's talk about it right after the break, though, Steele. Oh, my goodness. That was the whole first segment. Giddy up, and here we go, people. Because, look, at the end of the day, this all means big things for your fantasy team. And until we see the run out, until we see lines, look, Jake Guentzel's not even back in the lineup yet, right? We don't know exactly when. It should be very soon, but we don't even know where they're going to play. So that's even more of the heads up. And probably the main takeaway for this whole episode is if you are owners of guys like Hanifin, Tomas Hertl, who isn't back either, you have to have your finger on the pulse and make sure it doesn't mean always success right away. It might mean more success after the break. We'll talk about Tyler Toffoli, the Jets, our favorite deals, winners and losers. Today's episode is brought to you by a couple of sponsors. First and foremost, Sleeper. Regardless of where your favorite team is in the standings, you need to be winning big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports, especially fantasy hockey. To win 100 times your bet on Sleeper, you just need to correctly predict the outcome of 8-player stats. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy on Sleeper. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Today's episode is also brought to you by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Steele, did you know this? Robinhood is the only IRA that gives you 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold, baby. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. Steele, I don't know about you, but I'm ready to retire already, baby. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started on Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now, claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Giddy up.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Make sure you go over to Locked On Sports Today's YouTube channel. Subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. You can also find it now on Amazon Fire TV. They're doing great things over there. So make sure you go subscribe to the first ever national 24/7 sports streaming channel on YouTube, Locked On Sports Today. Absolutely love it. Let's continue the NHL Trade Deadline acquisitions here, and an absolutely crazy day around the league. Let's go over to the Winnipeg Jets, though. Winnipeg Jets acquire Tyler Toffoli from the New Jersey Devils for a 2024 third-round pick and a 2025 second-round pick. I'm going to let you speak at length about this one because I know you're high on the Winnipeg Jets and how you feel, but before I give it over to you, I mean, this is, again, a great trade for the Winnipeg Jets. This is also another team that has struggled to score goals in the playoffs. They acquire a Stanley Cup champion in Tyler Toffoli. The top 6 group is looking very solid. It all just comes down to, can they continue to have success in the postseason with this group? Because we've seen in the past that they struggle to score goals.
They've turned it around over their last 10 as well, Steele, when there was the wheels were starting to wobble a little bit there. They're 7-3-0 in their last 10. When you look at goals for, and you mentioned it, it's a concern because I believe they're looking at this, they're 5th in the division, in the Central Division in scoring. I believe they're 5th, which is an obvious concern. And look, Sean Monahan was an immediate success story. That's already a good ad. So on the low, you could have the Jets as a winner for this deadline, in my opinion, for adding Monahan and for bringing in Toffoli. Toffoli's been a body that's bounced around now, and fantasy-wise this year, he's been very up and down, hot at times, ice cold at others. It's an obvious, it's a sexy ad. I think it's a good one. I'm excited to see what it actually means for them down the stretch here because, look, they're only 2 points back of that first spot. And you mentioned it. They have kind of, to me, proven, look, Connor Hellebuck on the back end, the season he's having, to me, that immediately makes them a dark horse for the Stanley Cup. You have been one of those guys out there, Steele, saying he's the most valuable fantasy goalie out there. And I really don't think there's many angles to cover to disagree with you on that one. Is he going to face too much rubber again? Laurent Brossoit is probably going to be a good look week to week, as they probably want to hand him some minutes if they continue to be right there at the top. I'll leave it at this. I like the move. I want to see what this team looks like fully healthy because they've been banged up in the forward group. Kyle Connor's been in and out. Nikolai Ehlers has had issues. Gabe Velarde as well. That was the last one. So
Mark Scheifele was out for a little bit too.
Really sexy ad. I like it. Kevin Cheveldayoff, I trust in. He's right up there with the Bill Zitos, Jim Neals, the other guys that I've talked about all week long. So I like it. And look, if it works, that's right now immediately. Look, the West is loaded up, Steele. That's another note here. My goodness me, that Western Conference just loaded up. Anyway, I like the ad. Hit me with your take because I'm just rambling now because I'm fired up.
I like the ad as well. I think it gives them some great opportunity on the top 6 right wing side, filling in Tyler Toffoli, like I said, a Stanley Cup champion, and it's going to be very. I think it's going to be great for his game as well because, like you said, he's been hot and cold with the New Jersey Devils this season so far. It hasn't been the greatest season for him, so just getting a new opportunity in Winnipeg, a team that's in a playoff spot, he's got to be very excited about that. Sure. We're gonna get to winners and losers on the NHL trade deadline very, very quickly. But first, let's wrap up this segment with our favorite NHL trade deadline acquisitions. I've got 2, you've got 2. I'll try to rattle them off real quickly so we can get to yours. My two favorite NHL trade deadline deals. Vegas Golden Knights with the last-minute deal getting Tomas Hertl from the San Jose Sharks. They did have to give up a lot to get him, but it was completely worth it. Completely worth it, in my opinion. Actually, this is strange. I think this is a glitch on my phone right now because it's saying weird things. But Vegas Golden Knights acquire Tomas Hertl. The San Jose Sharks acquire a 2025 first-round pick, a 2025 third-round pick, and a 2027 third-round pick, along with David Edstrom. I think this is absolutely a great deal from Kelly McCrimmon. Also, the Sharks are retaining 17% of Hertl's salary as well, and he's still got a six-year contract left. So this is going to be huge for the Vegas Golden Knights. I love this addition. I know Vegas still has Ivan Barbashev, but I think Tomas Hertl can do exactly what Ivan Barbashev did last year in the playoffs, just having a great season, a great end of the regular season with that new team, and then transferring it into the playoffs. So I like that deal for Vegas. And my second favorite NHL trade deal that was done, Vladimir Tarasenko going to the Florida Panthers. It's the only deal that the Florida Panthers had to do at the NHL trade deadline, is just get somebody else in that top six forward group. I mean, Vladimir Tarasenko, Barkov, and Sam Reinhart as your top line, and then Sam Bennett, Carter Verhaeghe, and Matthew Tkachuk as your second. They didn't have to do much because the team has been steamrolling this entire season. They go out and get a Vladimir Tarasenko, who's had a pretty decent season with an abysmal Ottawa Senators team. I like those two deals right there. How about you? What are your two favorite deals from the NHL trade deadline?
Yeah, those are all really good. I also like the term abysmal there. Very accurate description of what's going on in Ottawa. Just a quick jab. Anyway, favorite deals. Look, the Golden Knights just came off the top rope. Those are obvious ones with Hanifin, Hertl. That's just a bit crazy. I really don't understand how Vegas continues to pull that off. Steele, there's so many things running through my phone right now. I'm really sorry. I'm struggling to kind of put it all together because there's so many things that I want to say and so many things that I want to cover. But let me just bring it in here, reel it in. Mittelstadt and Guentzel, in terms of what I think this could potentially mean to their on-ice product, those are the two that stood out to me. So number one for Colorado, and I think this is why I'm looking at definitely from a fantasy angle. Mittelstadt's addition into Colorado, if he for some reason is out there in your leagues, he immediately needs to be added. I don't care how he gets deployed because he is immediately going to get looks with some really good players, and Nichushkin is coming back as well. So for sure, from the fantasy-wise, I really like Mittelstadt. And Guentzel, if he is healthy and he's coming back in the next week or two, and Freddie is back, this team just invested in the on-ice product. There's so many good things going on in Carolina, not to mention they're right there at the heels of the Rangers. I think they're like 4 or 5 points back. So Guentzel, those are my two favorite. Those are the two obvious ones. But very quickly, Jason Zucker, that's a really good ad for the Predators. I don't know about fantasy value per se until I know where he's going to be deployed. But in terms of their on-ice product, I love it. Number two, Bowen Byram. Definitely fantasy-wise, he already produced in his first game in Buffalo. That's huge. I'm loving that one as well. That's sneaky. And we already talked about it, and I'll just leave it at this. The Kuznetsov ad could be one of those moves. This is one of the elite playmakers in the game only 6 or 7 seasons ago. He's only 31 years old, Steele. He had clear off-ice issues. But if he can get it going, they got him for nothing, and he doesn't have to be the guy like he was relied on in Washington. Give me a little bit of Rod Brindamore lighting a fire in his bonnet. That could be one of those sneaky under-the-radar deals that if it works out in Carolina, and you mentioned them being poised to go for the Cup now, why not? It just, what happens in the crease? That's the question mark for me, because that's where the question mark has been all season long, even though we know they needed secondary scoring, which they addressed. Those are my two big deals. Those are my 3 smaller deals, and I'm still ready to talk about winners and losers overall in terms of teams. Fired up.
It all stands on the health of Freddie Anderson and Pyotr Kochetkov for the Carolina Hurricanes. But if they're healthy, especially Frederik Andersen, this is going to be a very dangerous team come the postseason. We're going to get to our winners and losers of the NHL trade deadline day. Before we get there, this episode is brought to you by Indeed. When you're drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish you could do the same thing with your business team? If you're building a roster to win the league, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. Something I love about Indeed is that Instant Match because it does all the hard work for you. Sponsor a job and boom, Instant Match shows you candidates whose resumes on Indeed fit your job description immediately after you post. With Instant Match, you can start hiring fast. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring today. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon, Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and support you show us Monday through Friday. And of course, with the Saturday specials, with crazy NHL trade deadline happening. These are some of the biggest deals we've seen in a while, especially on trade deadline day. Let's get to our winners and losers of the day, though. I've got 2 winners. I've got 2 losers. I'm going to throw it over to you first. Do you want to start with the winners or the losers?
Let's start with the winners because I think the obvious one, let's just get it out of the way first and foremost because it's obvious. The Golden Knights. They just pulled off a masterclass in a whole bunch of different situations, navigating the cap, getting it done, however you want to break it down. But number one, they're still in a second wild card spot. And this is the angle I wanted to talk about, Steele, because I think this is very indicative of what they think of the competition around them. And if I'm the who's right behind them in the standings, it's the I'm butchering this bad, but that's
Calgary
how they
Flames right now.
Flames, Kraken, and they're nipping at the heels on the wild card with the Blues. So I think they're basically telling those 3 teams what they think of them right there because they've gone all in, no pun intended, Vegas-wise. When you're looking at how good Aiden Hill has been, when you're looking at how well they've been able to play, even when key pieces go out and Jack Eichel, Mark Stone, this is my thing. What if Mark Stone comes back? How do they handle all of this salary? I don't even know how that works.
He's coming back for sure.
He's coming back Undertaker style. So let's just get it out of the way. They're huge winners because Tomas Hertl comes in. They paid a hefty price. That prospect, by the way, that was the number 1 draft pick this year for the Golden Knights, and he's supposed to be a really, really good, talented young player. So anyway, they paid the price for Hertl. We don't know when he'll be back. They're the big winner of the day. And I just wanted to mention that angle in terms of where they obviously think they stand in terms of their competition because they don't really care that they're in the second wildcard spot. They think they're getting in there no matter what because this team, Steele, on paper at least, before we see these new pieces play, Anthony Mantha, the other big piece they bring in, you can't help but love it. And this team is now built for another deep cup run.
It's absolutely sensational what Kelly McCrimmon is able to do almost every single year at the NHL trade deadline. He's just a businessman all around.
This is my last one. This is my last one, by the way. This is a good one. Right now, they're lining up to play the Canucks in the first round. I think if you're the Vegas Golden Knights, you're liking that one all day long. And the Canucks, little tease, big losers on the day for doing nothing on deadline day.
Yeah, they've done a couple of deals prior to then, so I'm not sure if they felt like they had to, but they could have done maybe a couple of things in the bottom 6 group or even on the blue line. But they've made a couple of deals this year so far, so maybe they just felt like they didn't have to move any pieces. But I'm with you with the Vegas Golden Knights. For me, clear-cut winners of this one as well. You could throw in the Carolina Hurricanes and the Winnipeg Jets. I'm going to go off the board a little bit with this team for the winners. For the winners. I think the Calgary Flames have done a phenomenal job. With everything that they've gone through, everything that's transpired with Matthew Tkachuk leaving, Johnny Gaudreau leaving, trading out Tyler Toffoli. Ever since that's gone down, ever since they traded Tyler Toffoli last year, they've gotten a lot in return for their players that they've traded so far. Elias Lindholm, Tyler Toffoli, Nikita Zadorov, Chris Tanev, now Noah Hanifin. They've gotten multiple first-round picks. They've gotten multiple second-round picks, 4 third-round picks, a 4th and a 5th round pick. They've gotten a ton of great prospects in return as well. And they've got NHL ready players right now in Igor Sharangovich and Andrei Kuzmenko. So I feel like I think Craig Conroy should feel very happy with the deals that he's made this season. Since he's become the GM of the Calgary Flames, he should be very proud and happy with the return that he's gotten because of the problem and the scenario that he was put in with in some of these situations leading up to him becoming the GM. So I'm going to give a shout out to the Calgary Flames and the way Craig Conroy has handled this position that he's been dealing with over the last year.
I appreciate that take, especially given the situation. I hear people out there, kind of
Hey, they're still winning games right now too. So,
and that's what I think is holding the most water, because if they weren't, I don't know if what you're saying is exactly as accurate, but the bad hand that he was dealt is a bad hand. And at least the team is now at least righted the ship. My last winner on the Hums is the Florida Panthers. And I know they brought in Tarasenko and Kyle Okposo, but that's into the team that's the best in the NHL right now. And actually digging into the numbers, they deserve to be. I think they have the best penalty kill, one of the best penalty kills in the league. They're also stingy in terms of goals allowed. Bringing in Tarasenko is huge. And then you augment the bottom six with Kyle Okposo. Low-key honorable mention to the Panthers and the losers, Steele. I think it's clear to me that the Canucks, I understand that they didn't need to do things. That's an honorable mention in terms of losers. But two, right at the top of the list, one in the East, one in the West. The LA Kings needed to do something. I'm very surprised they didn't try and, I don't know if they tried, but they didn't do anything. They didn't try to augment the bottom six. They didn't try to bring in some goaltending help. They're going to run it out with Cam Talbot and David Riddick. That's bad news. And then in the East, another team that I think we heard lots about. I thought Stevie Y in Detroit was going to be looking to really take a team that's been playing well of late over the top. He's been so active over the last year and a half. There was rumors out there about him going after a number of different pieces, and they do nothing. They move Klim Kostin out. I don't understand that one from Detroit, especially how close they are in the standings. So losers, Red Wings and Kings, those are my two on the day. We talked about winners.
Losers for me, both coming from the Eastern Conference. I'm starting off with the New York Islanders here. That is a team that legitimately did nothing. They didn't make a single move this NHL trade deadline. Absolute complete losers, in my opinion. How do you not make a deal when you're that close to a playoff spot with a few games in hand right now? Lou Lamoriello, again, just sitting back and watching everybody else, every other GM get into the action, get their hands dirty a little bit. I mean, they haven't made, even just looking at some of the other deals over the last 4 seasons, you go back to last year when they traded for Bo Horvat. That was the best deal that he's made ever. But again, just looking at something, like they traded for Robert Bertuzzo. They traded for a guy named Tice Thompson. They traded for future considerations. They traded for Pierre Engvall. What are you doing out there, Lou? Get some guys in your forward group. Get some young speed in there. They're complete losers, in my opinion, and I think you'll agree with me on this, like most Leaf fans out there. Toronto Maple Leafs are also losers.
I left that one to you, Steele. I knew you had something to say about this one.
I mean, I do like the Connor Dewar trade. All they had to do was give up a 4th-round pick, and I believe 2024 it was, or 2025. I like Connor Dewar. He's a great 4th-line grinder. He's going to bring some physicality and some grit to this team that they're now showing, that they're now starting to show a little bit more. I like that they show that tenacity and grit again against the Boston Bruins in another 4-1 loss to them. But I don't understand, you go out and, again, no diss to Joel Edmondson. I think he is going to be great for the Leafs on the left side there. But I don't understand how you go out, trade all of those assets, all of those picks for Joel Edmondson and Ilya Lyubushkin when we talked about this. You could have, if that's the price to go out and get Matt Dumba, was a 2027 5th-round pick. And that's all it took to get Matt Dumba, a right shot defenseman. And he might be a little bit small, but he has some upside offensive ability. He's decent in the defensive zone. He's a right shot defenseman, and he is physical. He does get ferocious out there. He's a guy that can get under the skins of Brad Marchand, of guys that were, Boston Bruin players that we're probably going up against in the first round.
Dumba would have been nice on the Leafs.
To me, it's a complete joke. If that's the price to go out and get Matt Dumba and the Tampa Bay Lightning give up the 2027 5th-round pick and you can't, Brad Treliving, complete joke, complete waste. and they are also losers in my opinion.
I agree. There could be more out of that deal. I don't know. Like, it doesn't make sense. And that's why I said to you, is there more of those like details that we're not aware of? Because that really doesn't make sense. And just, I'll leave it at this last little tidbit that I'm reading here from Frank Saravalli. They had a deal. Bruins had a deal in place sending Linus Ullmark to the Kings.
I did hear that
and
as
it
well.
sounds like Ullmark, who has, I think, a limited move clause, nixed it. So maybe now I understand that the Kings did nothing, because I think that's really, if they did that, I would have called them.
Was it the Kings? Because I heard it was Detroit.
It was the Kings. Well, it could have been
wow.
both, but Frank Saravalli, certified tweet here, it was the LA Kings didn't end up crossing the finish line. Because if they pulled that off, I think I'd be talking about them in a whole different light. Anyway, big jam-packed episode. No bets for tonight because we had to keep it tight. However, Steele, there's going to be more news trickling out of the NHL over the next couple of days. We're going to cover waiver wire. This might be the most important and the last big waiver wire ad that means this much coming into the playoffs for fantasy season. So you want to be tapped into Monday's episode.
2 more regular season weeks in fantasy hockey leagues before the postseason starts. We're very excited about that. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Once again, go check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. You can also find it now on Amazon Fire TV. They're doing wonderful things over there. So make sure you go subscribe to the channel and check them out on Amazon Fire TV. Here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets, and we shall see you back here again on Monday.
Peace.